Kia ora e te whānau, and welcome to the New Zealand Institute of Buildings Industry Insights. My name is Pamela Bell. I am the Chief Executive Officer, or the Chief Everything Officer, as I like to think, here at the New Zealand Institute of Building. And the Industry Insights is where we talk about innovation and all the fun things that are happening in the industry that you need to know about. Now, today, we're very lucky to have two gentlemen from Ignite Architects with us. And today's session is brought to us by Bluebeam. So we'll be talking a lot about how they're using the solutions that Bluebeam provides. So I will kindly ask, first of all, Jeremy Benseman, if you could please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi all. So I'm Jeremy Benseman. I'm an Associate Director here at Ignite, and I'm also the Group Technology Manager. So I manage all of the design technology across our business. So not the IT side of things, it's more the technology we use day to day from BIM, Bluebeam, those types of things that we use on the floor for product production and those types of things. I'll just give a bit of an intro on Ignite as well, so in case nobody knows who we are. So we're a full service design practice that specializes in master planning, architecture and interior design. We've been around for over 30 years. We've currently got upwards of 180 staff and 6 studios across New Zealand and Australia. And we believe that good design enriches the human experience and positively contributes to our collective future.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeremy. Great to hear Ignite is 30 years old. The Institute is 40 years old this year, not that it's a competition, but it's good to be celebrating birthdays. All right, and we're also joined by Kevin Adasko. Please tell us a bit more about your role, Kevin.
Thanks, Pamela. My name's Kevin Adasko. I'm an Associate Director. I work in the retail mixed-use space sector of Ignite. We do a range of large-scale and multi-use projects, which encapsulates a lot of collaboration between multiple parties, hence the topic of today's discussion. So I think we've got a lot to talk about in terms of just the way in which we work, and just because it is mixed use and retail, there are a lot of parts that come together within that collaborative space.
Awesome. And we love collaboration. And speaking about collaboration and all wonderful things digital, I just want to remind people that we have got Slido questions in force. We've popped a couple in there that you can like or boost up if you want. So if you go to slido.com and enter the code, it's 73 96 38 5, and that's just going to be on the bottom of the screen throughout the webinar. Cool. So let's jump into it, folks. So first of all, we're interested in how do we balance all these wonderful digital widgets with actually our pen and paper and scroll. So I guess who would like to talk about the role of, I guess, pen and paper with digital?
I think I just wanted to make a note that as part of that balancing expression before, Jeremy adds quite a bit to that. Creative expression is part of what we do, and in terms of our craft as a creative profession, we generally collaborate between different parties. We have a lot of creative space, and we pride ourselves on that collaboration and also that tactility of drawing. So it's depending upon which medium we use. It could be digital, it could be a physical thing. So they kind of bridge the gap between that, and that collaborative piece comes together when we put that in front of our clients as well, and they really appreciate that.
Awesome. And I think just to be clear when we're talking about collaboration, and we'll be talking about that a little bit in a minute, this is not a soft, touchy-feely, nice to have. This means having a single source of truth. It's a robust, dependable baseline, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And sort of riff off what Kevin said there. Like the workflows for us are incredibly important. Of still maintaining that craft and the craftsmanship of design through hand drawing and hand markup and those types of things. And those individual elements, but being able to digitize that in a very digitized business, we are a very digitized business. That process of being able to use those traditional methodologies and bring them into a digital environment so that we can collaborate with multiple stakeholders across distance. Those types of things has been really important. So we found a lot of ways to kind of work with that and complement both of those approaches. And we continue to refine that over time. It's the technology is always moving as well, so that helps. In terms of markups, we found that the traditional hand-drawn methodologies are actually the fastest way of and most accurate way of doing that. However, being able to get that into a digital environment so that it can be shared, and multiple people can mark up that same piece of information without you having to print that drawing 10 or 15 times and having 10 or 15 different copies of it, has been quite important. So Bluebeam's really helped us with that that methodology. And then through that investment of getting Bluebeam on board, and then some hardware, so that's touchscreen laptops for the people that operate in that space. And then we also have these large format digital screens that anybody can plug their laptop into and utilize the same software. And so that's kind of I guess democratized how that can be used and enabled that collaboration to occur.
Awesome. Hey, Jeremy, can you talk us through, I know the iterative design process can be really extended from sketch through to develop drawings, but are you talking about kind of going back and forward between hand drawing? Can you just give it, where do you guys start?
Well, it's a bit of both, right? But generally, what we've tried to encourage over the last couple of years is that we use the digital tools to do the sketching in. So by providing those tools and giving people access to them, we can actually do the sketching, as you will, not on a piece of paper but on a screen, but it gives us the same result. Not quite the same tactility, there's still some elements that we would definitely do on paper, and then we'd scan them in and digitize them that way. But yeah, what we're trying to do is balance that traditional methodology with a digital methodology so that they both complement each other, and we can work together then across our 6 studios or with any other collaborators we've got externally as well. So.
Awesome. And does that help solve that really gritty problem of how to do hand drawing and have a conversation online at the same time?
Yeah, we have actually seen a couple of, and it's interesting actually, we didn't really present that as a solution originally, but I've actually seen that occurring in meetings. Just anecdotally, as I walk around the office, people have got Bluebeam up on the screen and they're sketching away on their screen and sharing that with whoever's digitally in that meeting, right? So
yeah, cool. So it's not just a markup, it's really a great way to do communication, because of course in the design world, a lot of the communication is through your hand, isn't it?
Yeah, and communication is like probably the number one in our business. So yeah,
100%. Awesome. And Kevin or Jeremy, is there anything you would add? I understand there's a solution that Bluebeam makes called Review. Can you tell us a bit about how you use Review?
Yes. So Review's just been sort of an advancement of that digital platform. So it's been filling that gap between PDF review and creation and hand drawing. So markup and collaboration, all of those elements kind of helps us sort of solidify that into one platform. We used to have multiple solutions for that, and we've kind of consolidated. And then having that digital record, which traditionally we might have lost some of that data, or had to have large volumes of storage to stick all these bits of paper in. So that's kind of helped to coalesce that, I guess.
Cool. And Kevin, what would you add to that?
I think just the cloud-based storage, there's solutions there with servers which you can store temporary files and things and also add to that. So there's always a record for those who have access, particularly to those projects, to gain, retrieve, check in, check out those documents. So it does become that single source of truth. And the ability to put up different formats in that space as well. You can put in a Word document if you want, or you can put in an Excel spreadsheet up on that server for reference for other material. So in that space, it becomes kind of like this temporary holding pen where everyone can just work in that space, reference material, which is at hand. and contribute to that collaborative environment. And having a single point of contact for that allows it and facilitates it a lot easier.
Yeah, nice. And let's move a bit more into that collaboration conversation, and just reminding folks that the slido.com code is 7396385. We're talking about collaboration, and of course this is not just as a practice with sub-consultants and partners externally, but this is our internal team, isn't it? Because we're not always in one physical place at one time. You're obviously geographically spread out, people are working from home, we've obviously experienced lockdowns. Can you tell us a bit about how that collaboration works within your team?
Yeah, sure. Actually, the pandemic was kind of interesting because we were actually already pretty digitally robust in that space. Like, you know, when that hit, we essentially all just walked out of the office and kept going, which was good for myself and my IT teams to know that we kind of built that robustness in and mobility, and that previously had been about mobility. And then what we discovered during the pandemic was that we were missing some of these tools around markup and 2D collaboration. We had tools for collaboration, you know, using BIM 360 in the Autodesk space. So we had tools for collaborating in the BIM world, but not really in that 2D front. And we found that some of our more grey-haired members struggled in that space, and you know, with the digital tools, because they didn't have access to printers and scanners and those methodologies that they've been using in the past. So that's when we began to really look into what we had available and what was available in the market, and how we could go there. And so Bluebeam Review was kind of came out of that process. We looked at a bunch of tools. There's a number of reasons for going with Bluebeam, but you know, traditionally we'd had Adobe and some markup tools and BIM 360 and some other things like that, Leonardo and a few other random programs that were around. Bluebeam kind of gave us all of the toolkits that those tools had and more. It was built for our industry, so it's built for the AEC industry. So it had toolkits that really suited what we were doing. It was cost effective, which was probably another thing, and it was also intuitive. Like it wasn't too much, and you know, we could kind of get it out there, and most people knew they could open up and view PDFs and do some markups, you know, at a minimum. So from that perspective, it was really good. Yeah.
And Kevin, can you give us a bit of a real life example from Ignite about the types of sub-consultants or subcontractors or the folks you're collaborating with, and what that looks like and how they get their heads around it? Yeah, can you talk us through that?
Just to add to what Jeremy was saying, it's an interesting package. Quite often you see a lot of consultants using it in quite a technical aspect. And we were quite curious when we approached using the software, and we found design attributes within it that could actually help us facilitate like really quick presentations for exploration and materiality of a particular render, for example. So you'd be cutting and pasting materials and putting it side by side, and you've got the collaboration of that whilst you're speaking with others. So if you create a live session, you can put that into a live session, have others join that session and collaborate in the same space. So even on a Teams meeting basis, when you want to catch up with a structural engineer, for example, you could be marking up structural elements while you're designing something in the background and reflecting on what the aesthetics of that might look like in the end result. And they get a really clear picture of what you're trying to achieve at the same time. So having those collaborative tools at hand is really valuable to have people mark up in that live real-time environment and then convey the message as quickly as possible. So therefore you're kind of capturing the meeting minutes at the same time, and there's a digital record that is literally what's been drawn as if you were sitting in front of them in the same office on the same table, instead of trying to scan that in. It's there, it's present. So you could often follow up just with a key summary of items in an email that captured the key points and actions that are required for that next stage of delivery, or what needed to be adjusted within a design.
That's awesome. Am I hearing that you're also doing this with clients? Because I have heard a rumor that sometimes clients like to change their minds, and I'm interested in how this tool might help freeze some of those design decisions. Are you saying you can kind of do that a little bit more in real time?
Yeah, we've done that on a number of presentations where we've had a room full of people from the client side and different stakeholders engaged, and they've all got varying backgrounds and opinions based on whichever elements are most in their forefront of mind when they're coming to the presentation. And it's really valuable to have the ability to switch out of the presentation mode, make a quick markup on the actual presentation document as a keynote and capture it. They know that they've been heard. They understand that we've understood the instruction or the exploration we need to follow, and kind of follow through on that. Alternatively, when we have a presentation, when we've got collaboration across offices with a client dialing in from a different location, we've done that live on screen as well. And that's really valuable because then they can see that you've understood what they mean because they can graphically represent it. And visual communication is part of what creatives do. That's what we pride ourselves on, is communicating clearly.
Yeah. Jeremy, I'm interested, when you said the COVID lockdowns hit, you were already set up, which is obviously due to your great team there. If other people were going down their digital maturity journey, if you like, how long has it taken you to get to this point? And what would some of those first steps look like for others?
We've been on the journey for probably 6 years, and I wouldn't say that we're done. I'd say that we're leaning more into the tools that we've got, and probably in the first instance. It really started with us way back when, like if I'm talking about the sort of Autodesk world, we had a thing called Revit Server, and that was so that we could collaborate across our studios. It was incredibly clunky, to use my favorite word. It was not very cost effective. Like we had to, there's a lot of IT support required. There was a lot of server power required. And then, the advent of BIM 360 really changed. It was a game changer for us. And we launched into that really quickly and saw the advantages of being able to collaborate in that sort of live real-time environment very, very quickly. And the investment went up very fast. And then after that, we came to Bluebeam and how we collaborate in 2D, Microsoft Teams, all of those types of things, which all seem kind of a little bit normal now, but they weren't 3 years ago. So yeah, it's been fast, but at the same time, in the middle of all of that, we've only been using bits and pieces of the tools. So what we're doing now is, and we're sort of in the middle of doing this, is going back and actually getting a bit deeper into the tool sets that we've actually got and going, hey, we can actually do this and we can do that. And, there's this workflow, we can improve that workflow, or we can shorten this up. So that's kind of the process we're in at the moment, is trying to really double down on the investment, I guess, that we've made, and make it, and really help all of our staff and all of the other people that are externally involved with us in projects to collaborate in a more real-time environment across the board.
So let's dig a little bit more into the Ignite story for a second. You talked about what I'll call digital normal. Some of these things have become normal around here. What other software or packages or platforms have become normal, and how do they all interoperate?
For us, it was most of it's around cloud operations, I guess. So in the Autodesk space, we heavily invested into BIM 360, which is now called Autodesk Construction Cloud. And we have very heavily invested in that space for both ourselves and for our client teams and other stakeholders. That environment allows us to do a lot of things. If you're just talking about Revit models, it's a whole sharing system. It's all tracked, so we know what's happened where and when. There's a lot of things in there. We can put any files against it, and it can become a file repository for the project. There's a lot of tools. We use it for our site observation records. We use it for we're starting to use it for communication as well. Like there's actually a comms piece that's coming in that, which hopefully might reduce some of the emails. So there's that, and then in the Microsoft space, I guess most users would be a Microsoft if you're not it's either that or Windows. Apple, but in the Microsoft space, the diving into sort of SharePoint. So we rebuilt our internal intranet on SharePoint, and we started using SharePoint for all of our sort of operational storage, file storage. So that's the location that everybody can go and find any of the guidance documents across our practice on how to do things. So we've built all of that over that sort of pandemic period as well, and we're continuing to dive into that and get better at it, and improve the search functions and that sort of thing, and then surfacing that with Teams. So Teams is kind of the front face of that now. So there's been that journey, and then the Bluebeam side of it with the studio sessions and 2D markups and drawings. And I guess what we're trying to look at now is, because they are slightly disparate systems and they don't necessarily all talk to each other, we're looking at ways we can start to sort of pull that all together, and make it even more accessible, I guess, especially
Awesome.
at a project level. Yeah.
Yep. So thanks for giving us a little peek behind the scenes at Ignite in terms of the digital,
You're welcome.
the stackable information. We're also at the Institute of Building a big fan of Autodesk Construction Cloud. They're one of our top whānau of sponsor partners. So I guess my question now for Kevin is, what does this look like externally? We've had the internal glimpse. What does it look like externally? I know that you worked on Sylvia Park. Are there some lessons learned or something you can share about how all this digital stacks worked for you?
Sure. I think just to add to Jeremy's commentary around that, it's part of Ignite's strategy to have those holistic systems, and they're always looking for solutions to integrate. And as he mentioned, trying to get them to talk to each other. So once we get a platform that's working, trying to make them a little more seamless in their integration. From an external point of view, having consultants abroad, particularly in Vietnam with our partner offices, it was really valuable in terms of time difference. It was valuable in the sense of language barriers that may occur and having that clear communication between it. So when we're doing review pieces for key milestone documentations, reviews, then we could have them a live session up and running in that particular moment. What was really key in those particular moments is you'd see them come online at the time difference, and as you've just written the note, you're seeing a reply automatically. So it became almost chasing the commentary around the page, and before you knew it, you had a solution before you even had to write the email as a follow-up to say, hey, have a look at these markups, have a look at this review and the commentary. And quite often they'd be marking up on the fly, and it was a bit of a game where you could just be having the RFI there, so the request for information, and then you've got to reply to that comment, and then it's already wiped off with a virtual highlighter to say done. So it was a bit of fun and games at the same time, but it was nice to see that collaboration, because when there was a language difference, they could see visually what the difference was, because communicating, a picture tells 1,000 words in that sense. So that old homage comes true.
Awesome. And we'd love to hear about a practical example for a client, whether that's Sylvia Park or another project. Can you tell us about how it might have saved time, or perhaps that's the example you were talking about there in terms of live markups?
I think that the live markups does save a lot of time, because if you think about it from a sense where you'd be printing a bunch of documents, you take it to a client meeting, there's markups, reviews, there's multiple people with different copies, having to translate them from different entities or different parties in that meeting onto one single source of truth, as we call it, then there's always going to be some mismatch or alignment. Someone scanned a version here and a version there, and they all come up into a digital space. When you get it into a digital collaborative environment where everyone's marking up off the same page, then it makes it a lot more collaborative. Having people provide their comments in the sense that knowing that there's no one can erase their commentary either. No one can mistakenly delete it, because only the person who enters it has that markup ability to take it off or review it. They can reply to and comment on them. And I think in that particular way, it made it just a bit more fluid. So it saved a lot of time of trying to reconcile the different packages or markups or reviews that other people may have contributed to that conversation.
Awesome.
I'd also mention
that
in that space, with the studio sessions, it actually tracks like this is in Bluebeam Review. There's, when we're doing a studio session, which is the collaborative environment, it actually tracks who's done what at any point. And so you've got this whole record of what's happening, which is helpful as well when you need to go back and go, what decision did we make at that point? And you can go back and actually see what's happened. So that trackability in any of these digital environments is super important as well. Like we need to be able to go backwards sometimes.
That does away with needing to have a memory, which is quite handy.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, because the ability within Bluebeam itself in those particular sessions is that you can follow the person as they're marking up, so you can actually see in real time what's actually happening. So it's a really good way if you're in a conversation or a Teams call or some other virtual conference and you've got someone on the other side of the thing. You don't need to screen share. You could be in the same space on your own platform and watch them in real time at the same time. So you don't get into that, oh, can I take control of your screen kind of game that happens, and quite often you end up with glitches with internet and other things that happen. So you could just live mark up while you're working in your own package, and you know that they can see your markups happening at the same time.
Nice. So we know where you've come from in this 6-year journey, what you're currently using. Really interested to talk about the future a little bit and to understand, perhaps, Jeremy, what are you curious about going forward? And it may or may not be any of those 2-letter acronyms on the screen. It might be other programs or, tidbits out there that you're interested to look into. What's taking your fancy out there?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. I mean, the future, especially in the last 9 months with the likes of ChatGPT and things like that coming out, is fairly interesting. I think there's a lot going to happen, but at the same time, I think having had 9 months of reflection on it, we've kind of realized that it's not going to happen as quickly as we thought. Like everybody thought that it was going to, it was a game changer. We're all going to lose our jobs, and AI is going to do everything for us. It's not like that. But there are going to be a multitude of new tools that are going to come out, and that are going to really help drive productivity, decision making. In our space with design, with iteration, so idea generation and the amount of iterations we can go through to test. I think that's going to be really important, and then being able to experience that in a virtual world through VR or AR or even mixed reality. I think that sort of space is still a little bit not gimmicky, but it's not quite refined enough yet.
It's very experimental, isn't it? Can you give us concrete examples of which bits you've played around with AI, like how you've applied it to the design?
I can give you. We've got quite a few examples actually. Like, so we have been careful about how we've approached it. We haven't just dived on in. So like one thing we've been very careful, and I'd recommend that everybody's careful about, is don't throw your company's data at ChatGPT. It's probably not the best thing. You don't own it then.
Why is that, Jeremy? Tell us about the key risk here.
The key risk is you don't own it anymore. It's a bit like Facebook. You stick it on Facebook, it's no longer yours. It's an area that you've got to be a little bit careful about. There are ways and methods to be able to do that internally, and we're currently reviewing those as well to make sure that they're, from a security perspective, robust before we roll them out. But we have been testing them. But in terms of the real world examples, so we've got a number of AI image generation tools that we've kind of been testing and looking into. And what we found with them is that they're really, really good and powerful tools to generate ideas from. But and they do produce some pretty amazing images, right? But they are generally not in context of the real world, so they don't necessarily always work as a real world solution, and they need that validation and finessing to turn that into an actual thing, or a real design that we can actually move forward with. So really brilliant for creating some ideas or testing out how materiality and things like that, how things might look and feel. But in terms of actually developing that into a cohesive design that's actually going to work, that still needs to come back to us. In terms of some of the other things, we looking at things like ChatGPT and other tools that are similar to that around helping us to analyze like some of our bid content, to build our bid content out quicker, create letters and all those types of things a bit faster. We're looking at trying to train some of that stuff on our own data, especially around search, so we can search our own data sets for patterns and things like that. That's probably more of a business sort of operational type thing than a design piece, but we're looking at lots of ways of how we can use these things across the board. So yeah, it's really interesting space.
Yeah, that seems like a really core function, doesn't it, for AI, the advanced search capability, because essentially otherwise we're just simply redoing all our work, aren't we? It just becomes about rehashing and starting from scratch. So surely there must be a massive opportunity around that design library type of space.
Yeah,
and only if it's internally created, because I'm wondering about the roles of sole traders, small and medium enterprises, or even people in large organisations that want to play with it, but obviously they can't risk the whole organisation's data. What would you say to people like that?
Be careful and read the security, read the small print.
Yeah.
Before you do it. I'm not exactly sure how to answer that. I'm sure that it's just something that you've got to be cognizant of and make sure that you just you are aware of aware of what you're doing before you do it. Which is a bit difficult in the AI space, I must admit.
I think if I were to add my 2 cents on that one, I think the caution comes around knowing the internal IP that you have, but wording it in such a way that you could put it in a generic sense to ask a question and then get a response that kind of answers the question in an AI environment. And it really is what Jeremy was reflecting on, was that framework on which the context of which you put it in. So if you ask a specific question, you get a specific answer back. So it can be very direct in that sense, and then you hone it as you refine the design or context or text or the wording. So for example, if you haven't quite got the words for something, you put in some keywords that you're thinking, it might be able to generate a paragraph for you and go, oh, that's kind of what the essence of what I'm trying to say. Use that just as a model and then you rewrite it yourself. You don't need to rely on AI as the verbatim kind of cut and paste. And I think that it can be potentially a lazy way of working, and you'll end up just seeing generic responses from people the more it's generated. So you can't remove that human element, that final touch where you're using all these tools, as Jeremy put it. You need to input them, they create what you need as their guidance, and then you output them. But that end touch is where you pull it all together.
Yeah. I guess from when I say data, I'm talking about when you are taking a document and getting the AI to analyze it. I think, as Kevin points out, if you're just looking for prompts and to build a paragraph, fill your boots, it's not really going to do anything. It's just like, I'd be careful about putting any data that you have, a document or numbers or whatever, at it and go, hey, give me some answers or analyze this for me. One thing we are looking at, which I've seen some progress in some of my colleagues overseas, is potentially looking at things like taking local building code, and training a chatbot on that so that you can actually query the building code for, here's my address, give me the rules, that type of thing. So those are sort of things that we're looking to try and play around with and see whether that's going to give us anything.
Jeremy, that sounds like it might be the answer to how we can get consistency and clarity for the building code and how it's interpreted across our 70-odd territorial authorities. Have you just struck gold there?
No promises there. It's just something we it's an idea that we want to look at into. If there's anybody else out there that wants to help us with that one,
I think you're being very modest. But I think also what I'm hearing is it's essentially like Chatham House rules, isn't it? If you take away the names and the attributions, then you can replay the story in another situation. So I think if we think of ChatGPT like that, then we're de-risking some of our IP.
Yeah. And the one thing I will say is on the image generation side, because I'm sure everybody's seen them on social media and various other formats, they do produce amazing images. but I don't think they can replace an architect or another creative at this stage because of the validation piece. It doesn't.
Oh, the piece that it has to actually stand up.
Yeah, that bit, you know.
Yeah, get the structural validation piece.
Yeah.
Although wowing clients obviously is a key outcome.
Yeah.
In terms of those other acronyms on our screen there, the virtual, augmented, and mixed reality versions, can you tell us how you're using those and if it's in the client space or another type of communication space?
Yeah, we've had virtual reality in the studio for probably about 4 or 5 years now. And most of our studios have got a set of goggles, and we do use them from time to time for client presentations when they're needed. They're probably not utilised as much as we originally thought they might be because it hasn't stuck. If it hasn't become, they're a little bit awkward to get into. You've got to do a lot of prep on the model so that you don't get things like flashing happening and which disorientates people when they're actually in the VR. So there's quite a bit of prep work involved in actually getting a model ready for VR. So virtual reality is kind of I wouldn't say it's just sitting there at the moment. And I think once that technology kind of steps up a little bit and the quality of what we can get into it improves, then that might start to take off a little bit more. Augmented reality and mixed reality, those tools are pretty cool. We probably don't utilize them as much as we should. We've got plenty of tools available to our studios to do that. So augmented reality and mixed reality is kind of like when it's like real and virtual at the same time.
Which is like checking as built are actually built according to design. I think that's and clash detection and stuff.
Yeah. And so it's probably more in that construction space. We have utilized it in the past for at a light sort of touch level for, you've got a bare bones site and you've done a model, you can go out to the site and scan it with your iPad and sort of see what it's going to look like in place. Those types of tools.
Products like Home AR, I think, is a cool little Kiwi startup, which is doing that kind of thing. It just helps clients get their heads into it, right?
Yeah. It's just a bit more contextual than a set of drawings, to be honest. But yeah, I at this stage, the technology has got to advance a little bit more, and then I think it'll become a bigger thing. The metaverse, there's a lot of discussion about the metaverse and whether or not that's going to have any validity in the future. I think it might, from a digital twins perspective, long term. Like that's where I see. It's just my personal opinion, but that's where I see it sort of being helpful in the future. We're moving into the space now around digital twins, which is where you have a virtual version of the built building, and you can use that for facilities management and asset management and all that sort of stuff.
Long-term maintenance, infrastructure, master planning.
But you start looking at that in like a citywide context, and then you go, okay, the metaverse might be the place where you could host that citywide version of that, and there'd need to be a lot of data standards around how you put all that together. But like, that might be a massive future thing, I think.
Yeah, we'd need a really big lockdown for that one.
Yep.
Kevin, is there anything else that you're curious about exploring or you can see coming up in the digital space?
I think Jeremy's touched on quite a lot of them, and I'm curious about how it moves from, like, you see it in art installations these days where you can have a QR code literally sitting on the bench and you put your camera around it in your iPad or whatever, and you can see the virtual building in real space. It's augmented in front of you. I think the real excitement around that is when it becomes more intuitive, where you are playing with the design in real time to pull it apart and put it back together like a virtual model, or that white card physical model that you would normally create as a working model. Those kind of interactions as in a craft sense is where it really becomes exciting, where you can start to explore those elements. And I think once it reaches the ability to do that, and when you're in the augmented space, then you could really start to see some of the designs change and quite fluidly, particularly if you're in a client meeting, for example, and it was as interactive as we all hope it would be.
Yeah, 100%.
One other thing I'd add,
Mm.
in terms of the future is I think life cycle is going to become well, it is already getting that way, but I think having platforms that deal with an entire life cycle of a building
Right.
is going to be, you know, from a sustainability point of view, from rebuilds, refits, you know, owners owning that digital asset as part of the building. I think
Yeah.
that there's going to be a really interesting space in the future as well.
100% in terms of capturing carbon content and product information and everything you need to know for maintenance and asset management. In terms of where you're looking or who you're looking to for the next big thing, I'm aware that a number of the products that are hitting New Zealand's shores, you know, like the Bluebeam ones, are coming from Oz. Are you looking to Oz, UK, US, anywhere in particular? I mean, who's just ahead of us? What should we be keeping our eyes on?
Oh, look, to be honest, I think New Zealand and Australia are quite ahead of the game.
Okay.
But I would say that we probably don't have the software developers enough, you know, that are building that for us. So we're sort of relying on the European or the American teams to build that software for us. That may change in the future. I think as things move closer to the cloud and you get well, more to the cloud, sorry, and you know, for instance, in the Autodesk space with what they've announced about they're building a cloud platform that will open up the ability to build plugins, you know, little bits and pieces that kind of localize how you might do things, workflows and methodologies. Yeah, but you know, I think New Zealand and Australia are definitely well up there. I am lucky enough to attend like Autodesk University most years in the States, and I mean, they're still talking about AutoCAD there, which is 2D drawings, right? So it's pretty interesting when you get to go to those things and, you know, at that sort of scale, and that's still dealing.
At the other end of the spectrum, I know a friend of mine is just finishing up working in Norway, where they have delivered several large-scale projects in a fully digital paperless format.
Yeah. Well, the Scandinavian countries they're probably the most advanced in that digital delivery space. Yes, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
And I'm hearing that we need to find a digital way to create more software developers. That might be a potential new use for AI to watch in the future.
Yeah, well, one thing that ChatGPT is good at is building code.
Well, there you go. Don't do yourself out of a job. Hey, I'll just see, Kevin, if you got any final comments or more 2 cents before I wrap up in the last 2 minutes.
Thank you. I think you took the words out of my mouth. That whole AI piece for writing code and components, you could put prompts into it and have it write the code for you, because you know what you want, you just don't know how to write the code. So I think that's a really good use case for AI and using its ability to kind of adapt those elements into a cloud environment.
Awesome.
At small scale as well.
And at small scale, yeah.
And I've been handily referring to Slido and making sure that we are on train with where people want to hear what we're talking about, which is essentially the future. So just very briefly, before I officially thank you, I wanted to just mention what is coming up in the future. So next month is November 2023. We are following on the digital first conversation and moving from the design to the construction space, having a chat with some folks from Procore at the end of November. Right at the very, very end of November, November 29th, we are going to be very happy to be launching the DigiGuide suite. Now, this is the value case for digital first and also the update for the BIM handbook, which was last updated in 2019. This is the collaboration between the Institute of Building and the BIM and NZ Steering Committee, and it's been absolutely supported by the Construction Sector Accord. So that's awesome. 29th of November is going to be a pretty amazing launch day, because it's also the day the NZIOB design guidelines come out, and they are going to be digital first also in the way that they are brought to the market, which is pretty exciting. And further into December, I believe we're going to see the launch of the NZS 3910 procurement contract, which standard conditions of contract, which we've been talking about at previous industry insights. So we'll probably be talking about that a bit more in the new year, because like most of you, December's crazy and January we're all at the beach. So that's a bit of a plan coming up. Look, I just want to really thank you both. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks for telling us about your story with Bluebeam at Ignite. Thanks for being with us today on Industry Insights. The things that these folks have mentioned will be up on our resources page along with this recording before too long, and we will see you all again in a month's time. So thanks for being part of it today. Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.